left out the original list. The original list, you had said that the library was given, and you had named 7, 8 of them. We should be running that list. Yeah.
Because I just get these reports.
I know.
That's interesting. And I also shared out Chevy Chase was doing that things.
Oh, no.
Tim Kleinfeld was doing that. She said, well, I didn't know the foundation had an executive director.
Oh, no.
So the whole time she thought you found that.
Oh, no.
That's why she was reaching out to you asking.
Okay.
So I clarified. I was like, I see the communication Robert Hartman. So
Well, has she left trash? You can shut that.
I want to ask Robert Hartman if he did get that second
Okay.
check from her.
Good.
Because all I get are these automated things that come through their system, and they send out a report like twice a month.
Gotcha. All right. Well, let me see.
Quorum, so.
So was I.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna let Andrew.
Okay.
It's like, where did the traffic come from? There's no traffic.
Barbara's not here. She's at a retreat,
Okay.
and Victor's not here. If we want, we can just say a very top level, like spending is on par with last year and no pressures for the finance report.
Okay.
Oh, do we, all right, so or we can get Oshika from and Sherelle from the finance.
Rashika
Oshika. O-O-R, Oshika.
or Shika.
So if you want them to give a full report, or you can.
All right. Well, just a few minutes late here, but it's that time, so I would like to call this meeting of the Board of Library Trustees to order. As always, I want to start by just welcoming the public, of course, the DCPL staff, and our executive director, Rich, and my fellow trustees here this evening. Thank you for joining us. And, I also want, of course, welcome all of our guests who are joining remotely on the Library Channel's YouTube channel there. To start, want to do a roll call to establish quorum. And so if I could ask Mr. Romero to do the roll call.
Great. Good evening, Mr. Chair.
Good evening.
Mr. Chanel Anthony. Ms. Donella Brockington.
Present.
Mr. Leif Domerstroh.
Present.
Mr. Victor Reynoso. Mr. Andrew Trueblood.
Present.
Mr. Tony Williams.
Present.
Mr. Brian Williams. Mr. Richard Reyes-Gavlon.
Present.
Mr. Chair, you have quorum.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Gary. So for the first order of business, I would like to adopt the agenda. So let me just ask my fellow trustees, have we all had time to review the agenda? And do we have any edits, concerns, changes that we want to discuss? All right. If not, do I have a motion to?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Fantastic. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Perfect. And that, the agenda is approved. All right, well, perfect. As always, at the start of our agenda, we have public comment period. So, I would like to welcome our guests, public guests, to the meeting who have signed up to present tonight. As always, I'd ask that you start off by introducing yourself, stating your name, if you are representing a group, and please keep your comments appropriately brief. We have a full room here and a full agenda for our meeting. But with that, Gary, let me turn it over to you.
Great. Mr. Chair, we do allow 3 minutes for public comments. We provide a clock at the time for the public comments. Mr. David Sobelson's the first guest to speak tonight, and he also has a written testimony that I'll deliver to the board later tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Chairman Williams, trustees, staff, neighbors, I am David Sobelson, Advisory Neighborhood Commissioner for ANC 6B. I live at 319 5th Street Southeast, about 2 blocks from the Southeast Library. I frequently use that library. On July 11th, our ANC voted unanimously to authorize me and one of our residents, Susan Sedgwick, to represent the ANC at this Board of Trustees meeting. Ms. Sedgwick is also on the board of the Capitol Hill Village. Though ANC 6B is in Ward 6, our library is also the closest for many residents of Wards 7 and 8. Maybe that's why Ward 6's libraries have the second most visitors of any ward in D.C. Later this year, the Southeast Library will close for renovations. It will stay closed for at least 2 years. D.C. library guidelines claim that DCPL, this is a quote, DCPL will look to provide an interim facility when a library will be closed for longer than 1 year. But in several community meetings over the years, library staff seldom mentioned an interim facility. When we asked, they assured us they'd follow library guidelines. From a meeting in January 2019, quote, we are committed to providing some kind of interim services. From July 2020, quote, services will continue in the immediate area of the Southeast Neighborhood Library building. From just this past September, we're working diligently, that's a quote, to find, quote, a destination to pick up books. Yet library staff still refuses to commit to a place to pick up or drop off books, to provide computers to access the internet, or to check the library catalog, or to provide a scanner or a copier. When the Foggy Bottom branch closed for renovations, residents got interim space in the Watergate. When the Southwest branch closed for renovations, residents got a trailer. Neither branch closed for longer than the Southeast branch will close. Southeast residents deserve at least as much as residents of Southwest and Foggy Bottom. Thanks to Barracks Row Main Street, we did find a place for a weekly kids' story time program. Is that what library staff meant by some kind of interim services? In January, the RANC set up the ANC 6B Southeast Library Task Force, which I chair. Ms. Sedgwick also serves on that task force. Our task force has met every 2 or 3 weeks for months. We repeatedly invited your director, Richard Reyes-Gavilan, to meet with us. He refused. We identified potential locations for interim services, locations that might cost less than a suite at the Watergate. We've even identified potential funding sources. Instead, Mr. Reyes-Gavilan told us to walk to the Northeast branch, almost a mile from the Southeast branch, farther for those who live south or east of that branch. For our public housing residents in Hopkins Apartments, Potomac Gardens, and Kentucky Courts, the Northeast branch is well over a mile. For some of our residents, it's closer to 2 miles. Able-bodied adults take 20 minutes to walk 1 mile. Older adults take longer. So do parents traveling with children. These kids deserve interim library services closer than a 30 or 40-minute walk. So do their parents. Most adults I see at Southeast Library use computers to hunt for jobs. The board should care as much about them as about residents of Foggy Bottom. The board should also respect seniors and other residents with limited mobility. What will staff say to people with disabilities? Roll your chair to Northeast? Some might claim that despite library guidelines, only neighborhoods that get a new build, in quotes, get an interim library. Southwest had a new build, so Southwest got an interim library. But it shouldn't matter into what pigeonhole a new library fits. Instead, as the guidelines indicate, it should instead matter how long the branch will stay closed. Southwest's branch closed for 2 years. Our branch will close at least that long. After months of lobbying, and thanks to Ward 6 Councilmember Charles Allen, in May, the D.C. Council appropriated $191,000 for interim library services at the Arthur Capper Recreation Center, 1000 Fifth Street Southeast. It's less than half the amount Southwest had for its library trailer. Arthur Capper isn't that close to the Southeast branch. It's not even in our ANC, it's actually in Ward 8, but it is closer than the Northeast branch. And it would provide the first local library facilities for residents of Ward 8's Navy Yard. Maybe that's why it got enthusiastic support from Ward 8's ANC commissioners and from Ward 8 Councilmember Trayon White. We find it acceptable. But Mr. Reyes-Gavilan still won't commit to properly equip and staff an interim library at Arthur Capper. Though he refused to meet with our task force, which we established specifically to deal with this issue, Mr. Reyes-Gavilan did finally appear at the June meeting of our full ANC. At that ANC meeting, Mr. Reyes-Gavilan continued insisting that we should all just travel to Northeast. But he conceded that the council had provided funds for interim services at Arthur Capper. He refused to commit, however, to keeping Arthur Capper open for any particular number of hours per week or to letting us pick up or return library books there. Some of us wonder what it means to have a library if there's no access to library books. Mr. Reyes-Gavilan also promised only a printer, not a scanner or a copier, a laptop vending machine, something with which the DC library system has no experience, and 2 digital navigators, but no regular library staff. When we asked why he couldn't reassign current Southeast staff, he claimed that they'll have, quote, other places to go, end quote, as if it's out of his control, and that digital navigators are better anyway. Better than what, he didn't say. He also warned that any services at Arthur Capper would have to wait until months after the Southeast branch closes. It wasn't clear why. I asked him when the Southeast branch would close. Mr. Reyes-Gavilan would only say at that meeting that he still targets this summer, but he, quote, wouldn't bet my life savings. Without a specific closing date, he refuses to notify patrons of the library's imminent closing. Because current renovation plans will require use of neighboring property, I asked him if he's reached agreement on those plans with adjoining homeowners. He claimed not to know the answer. My ANC urges the Board of Trustees to instruct staff to tell Southeast Library patrons that their neighborhood library will soon close, and to commit, while the library is closed, to provide a place near the Southeast branch for us to pick up and return books, to keep that location open for a minimum number of days per week and hours per day, to provide a minimum number of computers and a printer, scanner, and copier at that location, and to assign at least 1 regular library staff person to that location, and to open that location the day after it closes the Southeast branch, not months later. To quote a resident who attended an October 2018 community meeting about the planned renovation, quote, "You can't just close our library and tell us to go downtown or to Northeast. We use the building here, and we still need services here. You're just coming in here making decisions without considering us and our needs," close quote. It's been almost 5 years since that 2018 meeting. Staff has had enough time to figure out how to provide my neighborhood with interim library services. We would be happy to answer any of the board's questions. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Appreciate you making the time and coming up here and sharing sharing your testimony here. Certainly something for us to understand and dig into and look at more. And I think we'll be following up on that. I think important for us to be able to get a full picture of what's going on there in Southeast. Appreciate the importance of the Southeast Library to your ANC and to that community. As a former Capitol Hill resident, understand how important it is, and excited overall about the renovation there, but want to make sure that we are, of course, providing the right level of service in the interim period. Let me open up to my other Board of Trustees members to see if anyone else has any further questions for David. Well, thank you, and we will make sure to follow up with David.
Thank you very much. Now I'm going to introduce Susan Sedgwick.
I'll go ahead and do that first.
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, we also have Susan Sedgwick signed up to speak tonight, and I have copies of her written testimony that I'll give you too. Sure.
Well, good evening, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Susan Sedgwick. I live at 223 8th Street Southeast. I'm an avid library patron. I check out both physical and digital books. You probably know the Southeast Library is a prominent and central part of my walkable neighborhood. Many thanks to the DCPL staff for providing this facility and services and planning for a much-needed renovation. And I was thrilled to see the pictures here. And I live north of the library and not next door to it, so I can't speak for the immediate neighbors and how they're going to be affected. I'm here to talk about services. But I am concerned about the lack of interim services near the library building. I'm a member of the board of Capitol Hill Village, one of 13 senior villages in DC. Our 400-plus members have banded together to build an organization to help us age in community. We have programs for active older adults and provide services to those who are no longer physically able. Many of our members use the services of the DC Library provides. As an organization, Capitol Hill Village is most grateful for being able to use the meeting rooms, and we've used them regularly, especially before COVID. As some of our members frequent the Southeast Library, I was asked to join the ANC 6B task force formed to advocate for interim services when the library is closed for renovation. My constituents are the older adults who use the library, more than just the members of Capitol Hill Village, but all older adults. Many have limited mobility, but their desire for physical books is strong. All of us assumed that the library system would provide some interim services so our Southeast Library habit could be served. We are amazed that that is not the case. Some are in a quandary about what to do when the library is closed. One told me that she's planning on collecting 2 years' worth of books. I laughed with her, but I think she's serious. The option the DCPL leadership offered would work for those who were able-bodied to walk the extra distance to the Northeast Library. My husband tells me that I am in that category. I talked with some of our members who are having trouble getting around, and they tie visits to the CVS and the Trader Joe's when they make their library visits. They shake their heads when talking about walking or taking a bus to the Northeast Library. They're not up to it. In researching alternatives, I came across an existing DCPL program called Library by Mail. This program works under the Disability Services unit of DCPL. The library staff will mail physical books to patrons who have applied for this service. Learning about this program has excited the care managers at Capitol Hill Village, as it is a service that can provide access to books that many older adults crave. We think older adults across the city who find it difficult to go to the library would also be pleased to have this service. My concern is that we would inundate the current operation. Currently, we have a test case underway to find out how the program really works from a patron's point of view. My 88-year-old neighbor, who has been trekking to the library to pick up books for her invalid husband and herself, have applied. Her application has been approved, and she's awaiting the books she has ordered by telephone. To help you understand the potential demand for services designed for older adults in DC, here are some demographic data used in Capitol Hill Village recent strategic plan, and most of this data came from the Office of Planning. And I've got the data in here, and I'm not going to read this paragraph because it's kind of dense, but it's there for you to look at and to recognize the fact that we have an aging population, and it's getting more. There's more of us. And I guess everybody in this room are probably going to be in that same category. And you probably have mothers, too. Okay, you probably are aware.
We hope so, at least.
Yeah, you probably are aware that people age at different rates. Some older adults remain able-bodied into their 80s. Walking to the library provides exercise and social interaction. Sadly, others are more limited. Also, please be aware that some older people are okay with using a computer, and we encourage people to maintain those skills. However, we are finding as many people become older, they become not so keen on using them. My neighbor who has applied for the library by mail is one, and who has decided that she can no longer use a computer. She, for some time, has been calling the branch librarian to order books. I didn't know this, but she's been calling them up, and she gets a phone call when her books are in, and she manages to get over there to get them. Others, like me, still order books online and watch for the email telling me when the book is ready for pickup. Now I've given you some statistics and anecdotes. Here's my ask. Please direct/encourage DCPL management to prepare to serve the looming number of older adults in DC who will need special services to help them obtain books and to return them. Now, no one's asked me for recommendations, but I'm going to give you some anyway. Streamline the way patrons use library by mail to order their books. For those who can use computers, maybe the pull-down menu showing branch libraries could include a library by mail option, ? Ordering by telephone should remain an option as well. 2, develop a marketing plan that includes encouraging library staff to tell their patrons about the program. 3, advertise the program as a service for older adults. Their families, case managers, etc. might encourage the patrons to sign up. Ensure adequate staff so to be responsive to requests for titles. And again, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak, and I wish everybody well in this effort to get the library renovated. I'm very excited by what I saw in the brochure tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. As I mentioned before to David, I'm really excited too. I'm also excited, when you think about the increased access that the new library will have for those patrons who, have mobility challenges. And I want to just say I appreciate some of the thoughts and the suggestions, particularly about how we might be able to do better to promote our library by mail program, to make sure that older adults do maintain access during this time. Certainly something we'll spend some time to look into and understand a little bit about. I did have one question, which is you mentioned that you tested this, and you had a member of your community who applied for the program. They were able to get approved and order a book. What was the time between when they applied to the program and their approval?
Well, she applied, and I called her up. I said, Hazel, have you heard from them? She said, no. And said, Hazel, give them a call. And the person, it was maybe about 3 weeks, and the person on the other end said, oh, you've been approved, but they had never closed the loop. And so then she had fun and say, well, I'm going to order a book. And this woman is close to 90. And she says, I've never read Lolita. I'm going to order Lolita. And she giggles, so that's another way of putting it.
Well, there you go.
Light of my life, fire of my loins.
All right. Well, thank you again. And
When you said for the interim, this library mail for the interim, I think this is a service for all time. Citywide. That we're going to need, I'm going to need my books at some point in time, and my husband's not going to go over and get them for me. So this type of service would be good for me as I get older.
Absolutely. I think, for all of as we all age and hopefully don't experience mobility challenges, but should we, I think it's important that we make sure that everyone has access to the DCPL system. I think that's a commitment that this board has made. So we'll definitely spend some time to understand a little bit more about what we can do to make people better aware of the Library by Mail program, and make sure that we are specifically also targeting those communities around the Southeast Library. Thank you. Gary?
And Mr. Chair, no other signees tonight for public comments.
Susan, can I ask a question?
Yep.
The website, has that been, since the website has been updated, or was that previously?
One suggestion I have is when I order books online, I go over and say, where do I want my books delivered?
That's been in the past month, or,
I do this all the time.
okay,
And so we did Southeast Library, and I thought, gee, if I start ordering books library by mail, am I gonna have to make a separate phone call and wait for somebody to answer the phone? Or could I just scroll down and hit a library by mail as I was if it were a branch? Now, there's a lot of back office stuff that would have to be done on that, so I know it's not simple, but I thought that might be a way to kind of expedite and be a way of potentially streamlining the process.
and we just updated the website, so,
Oh, you did? When did you update it?
yeah, that's
About
about,
a month ago.
Oh, I've been on the website since then,
okay,
but I went down scrolled down through the menu and it wasn't there.
got it.
Yeah.
Good recommendation, thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All right.
What do you think about the extended hours?
Extended hours?
Uh,
In terms of getting the library later?
Yeah. You seem to be an avid user, so,
Well, I'm retired, so I can go into daytime.
so you go during the day.
If there's a program, I would probably might be able to do that, but generally after dinner.
Thank you.
All right, well, with that, I'm going to close the public comment period of this board meeting. And next up on the agenda here, we have the approval of the board minutes from the May 24th DCPL board meeting. Let me start off by thanking Vice Chair Anthony for leading the May meeting and taking us through that. I certainly appreciate you. Have all of us had the opportunity to review the minutes? And let me ask if there are any questions or changes that we want to propose.
None.
All right, if not, do I have a motion to approve the May 24th board minutes?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Fantastic. All in favor? Aye.
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 The ayes have it, and the board minutes from the May 24th board meeting are approved. Next up, we have the chair's report. I'm going to be relatively brief this evening. And really, I want to say how excited I actually am and looking forward to the introduction of our new Director of Safety and Security, Tanya Chapman. I think she's going to be doing wonderful things here at DCPL, and I'm excited to have her on board. I also am looking forward to hearing from Sarah Black this evening around the development and the ways that DCPL were able to use some of the ARPA funding that we received from the federal government. I think we did some really innovative and creative things here at the library, and look forward to hearing from Sarah about those programs. And lastly, if anyone hasn't seen it, the Leonardo exhibit is just absolutely fantastic. It's been a pleasure to come by here and see lines outside of the door. And I think Rich is going to talk a little bit in his executive director's report about that really special exhibit and what we were able to do here. So with that concludes the chair's report, and let me turn it over to Rich for the executive director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening. Excuse me, everybody. I'll try to be brief. There's a lot to cover. Maybe I'll start with that Leonardo update. This is really exciting stuff. And has everyone seen it on the board at this point? I know some of you were at the opening on the 20th. So we publicly announced the Leonardo exhibition at the last board meeting in May, and that honestly feels like 10 years ago, considering all the work that's been done to bring that exhibition here, install it, communicate about it, and create a whole sort of visitor services department around it. We've had about 14,000 people visit the exhibition since we opened on June 20th. Bringing visibility to the MLK Library, the likes of which we've really never seen. We've garnered local and national press highlighting the significance of the exhibition, but very importantly, also the broader appeal of the MLK Library. We've been conducting some exit interviews, several hundred actually, and we continue to collect them. And here's some a few stats that are interesting. 55% of the people that we've randomly interviewed had never been to this building before. 91% of those indicated that they do plan to come back. 80% of the visitors to the exhibit have rated it a 5, or the highest mark that you can give it based on the scale that we've provided. 81%, or 4 out of 5 visitors who visited, also visited other floors of the library, which of course is an important goal for us. The most popular destinations have been the rooftop, the 4th floor exhibitions, the cafe, the children's library with the related Leonardo activities for kids, courtesy of the DC Public Library Foundation. Thank you, Susan Haight. And also the National Women's History Museum exhibition on the 1st floor. Our visitation numbers would have been even higher, but for the Saturday, July 1st, closure of the MLK Library due to a malfunctioning HVAC system. Issues with the building's HVAC continue to be a concern, and we plan a more fulsome discussion with the Facilities Committee at our meeting in September to discuss that issue. And while we have another 3 weeks to go, I want to not thank only Linnea Hegarty, who's not here tonight. Linnea just got back from Pittsburgh. She was checking out another exhibition that we're bringing over to DC next year. But I want to really thank, and so many people are here, every other department at DCPL that worked really fast to bring this exhibition here. Procurement, legal, capital planning, facilities, public safety, communications, on and on and on. A lot of departments that don't get a lot of credit worked really hard in tandem to bring this here. And of course, I want to thank you guys, the board, for being supportive of us and having the confidence in us trying to do something entirely different. If any questions about Leonardo thus far?
No questions from me, but I do have about Leonardo in particular. But I do think it highlights for me the importance that these activations, roles these activations can play in bringing people into the libraries and just showing them these wonderful spaces. And in particularly, as we have talked about before, sort of as coming out of COVID, the lower foot traffic that we are seeing in some of our branches. Would love to, Rich, for you and the team to think about how do we make sure that we're activating not only our central library, but how do we also activate some of our neighborhood libraries to also, draw foot traffic into them as well?
Yeah, I mean, that's the eternal question. We're so blessed with space in this building. And also the accessibility of this building. Remember that people can get to the MLK library. You can get here from the Navy Yard close faster than you can get to Southeast. And so there's something very strategic about this location. But that is a goal, Tony. We do oftentimes try to create satellite exhibitions when we have something going on here. We've chatted a little bit about something that we'll be introducing next year, Building Stories, a partnership with the Building Museum, and we do plan to have satellite programming and exhibitions in our branches. But look, let's face it, we invested $211 million in this building for a very specific reason. This building is half the library's footprint, half the library's overall footprint. I shared with you all, we had 65,000 visitors in June alone, which annualized is almost 750,000, which, considering what we've seen across the system with reduced foot traffic, really speaks to the fact that people are coming from far and wide to see Leonardo, to go to the Go-Go exhibit, to go to the cafe, to experience just the grandeur of this space. Your point is well taken. We will continue to work on it. I'm looking at Tiffany, and if Tansy were here, we'd be looking at Tansy, but that is the goal for sure.
Can I ask a question about your survey? Did you ask how they found out about it?
Yes. I don't have all of that, but I'll share it when it's done, Andrew. I have asked this question. A lot of it was word of mouth.
Really?
And people who were visiting from out of state were told about it by the people that they were visiting. A lot from the national media. So NPR did a story. I got calls from colleagues all over the country. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
I was driving to work. I heard you on NPR. This sounds awesome. A lot of NPR helped push people here. And I don't know if anybody else has seen the survey, but there's some really interesting tidbits. All really great news.
Yeah, and the reason I ask is because I think there's a lot of reasons for people to be in a lot of places, but how do you reach them? And I think that's probably as important as what it is. It reminds me, we're doing work about reimagining downtown and just this idea that this is an anchor and it can bring people not only from across the city but across the country. I think is the story that certainly the city would be interested in hearing.
Oh, I share it with the city,
Okay.
especially around budget formulation time. Yeah.
So,
Go ahead. Dylan.
I'm sorry, I'm sure you collected demographic data. I'm, anxious to see kind of where people reside, whether, we got a lot of international visit, or whether, what percentage are actually DC residents.
We'll share that with you. I don't have all of that, Danella, and we're continuing to do exit surveys, and we'll
Okay.
do it through the end of
You'll
the
go through, okay.
through the closure of the exhibition. But all really interesting stuff, reaching new audiences. It's a dream come true for me.
That's,
When does it close again?
August 20th.
so we've got another month.
Yeah, I mean, my question aligns with Danella. I understand DCPS is out of school, but I would hate for this to leave and local brown DCPS kids don't get a chance to experience this, right? I mean, in the event that they don't make it to Italy, this is the first time, one of the only times
Yeah.
they'll get to see this, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Chanel, I shared that ideally when we were negotiating with all the our Italian partners, We had hoped that we could do this in the fall rather than the summer, but they were adamant that it had to be in the summer. So it is a bit of a lost opportunity. That said, we do have, we do see kids in there all the time. I don't know where they're coming from exactly. We've got a great contingent of summer youth employees who are working the exhibition. So there's no shortage of kids and teens who are down there. And, we'll have the Leonardo's Lab on the second floor. That will be here through actually the end of September. And that is always packed, which is great. And each one of the stations, if you've not seen it, each station has an activity and it tells a little story. He wrote backwards. He was an anatomist, and then you do something. He experimented with flight, and you create a little helicopter, and you press a button, and it creates a little fan that keeps your helicopter aloft. So there's a lot of learning going on as well.
Thank you.
Great. So the rest of my report will be really quick. The executive director's report, again, includes all the great programming, or some of the highlights of the great programming going on here in between this board meeting and the next board meeting. I know a lot of folks are excited about a small exhibition celebrating AKA sorority. That's happening beginning next month. We've got great award-winning authors like Elizabeth Acevedo. We've got concerts by the Punk Archive. And then on the last page, a program that is near and dear to my heart. I was just telling Leif about this a little while ago. New Yorker writer Burkhard Bilger, who's going to be here in conversation with a renowned surgeon and best-selling author Atul Gawande. And they're going to be talking about Burke's book about discovering his grandfather's ties to Nazism. So lots of awesome stuff. Just tonight, some of our staff can't be here because we have our ongoing partnership with the Well-Read Black Girl, and that is just a book club that has, a lot of people interested, a lot of people participating, and it's, it's nonstop. And then finally, Tony, you introduced Tanya. I might just give her a chance to say hello. And very quickly, at our March meeting, you all remember we had a really long conversation about public safety, and one of our goals was to hire a wonderful leader for our public safety unit to give us the thought leadership that we need to improve safety across the library campus. We are so thrilled and honored and lucky to have Tanya Chapman, who's been with us now for about 6 weeks. Tanya's got 30 years of law enforcement background. She's been a city manager. She's been a chief of police. She's been a deputy secretary of public safety and homeland security. And she's been a police officer for about 20 years and a captain for the Arlington PD in Virginia. And we're lucky to have her. And she likes us. We like her. So far, so good. And she's been visiting branches, talking to staff, figuring out pain points. And we agreed that in the fall, either in September or November, depending on what you all want, we will have a more fulsome presentation from Tanya talking about her early experiences as a director and some of the things that she's working on and may want to change. So Tanya, just a few words from you.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. It is an honor to be here as your Director of Safety and Security. I was asked to talk a little bit about myself, but Rich has covered it all, like he said.
Sorry. You'll get used to that.
I started my career with the Arlington Police Department, where I retired as the captain, the first black female captain in the history of the department. I later went to Richmond as their deputy chief of police. While spending time in Richmond, I was actually pulled from the police department to serve as the director of social services for a short stint. I was then appointed by Governor McCullough to serve as deputy secretary of public safety and homeland security. I did that for a couple of years before I reached my dream job to become chief of police, which was always my aspiration. I spent some time in Portsmouth as the chief of police. I was then asked by Governor then Northam to serve after my stint with the Police Department, the chair of the parole board. So I went full circle in my career, spent 20 years locking them up, and now I'm letting them out. So times have changed. So that was deeply an honor. And now I'm here. And, you know, it is an honor to be here to share my talents and my treasures with DCPL. I am looking forward. I've been doing an assessment over the last 6 weeks, and I will continue that assessment. And throughout my career, I've also had an opportunity to obtain several degrees. I have a master's in business administration, a master's in public administration. I'm finishing up my dissertation so I can have my doctorate. So I am an avid user of the library. And yes, I get my books served at home or sent to me at home. So I am a proponent of that as well. But I am excited to be here, and I look forward to working with you all.
Thank you so much, Tanya. We're so excited to have you and look forward to you know, understanding what your analysis of how we can make the libraries safer, more secure, and more welcoming places.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Great. Now, the last part of my report is our the meat of our presentation and possible discussion. While I've been singing everyone's praises around Leonardo, I should probably be spending more of my time singing the staff's praises around our ARPA expenditures. So when we were informed that as the State Library for Washington, D.C., that we were going to be getting north of $2 million to spend in a very short amount of time to address COVID impacts on the library and the city, we all panicked for a little while, for sure. And then we found out we had millions of dollars more thanks to the FCC's devices, well, what became our Devices for Residents program. We've been very, very, very busy since 2020 and 2021, enriching district residents' lives with technology and internet access and training and close collaboration with partner institutions. So Sarah is going to move quickly as our facilitator tonight and talk about all the staff's great works, highlights of our projects, and then open it up to you all. But round of applause to all the staff for really great work, doing all sorts of stuff with our facilities and our residents, and it's been, I'm really proud of it. So Sarah, thank you.
Thanks, Rich. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So just some brief background on ARPA. In March of 2021, as you know, President Biden signed this $1.9 trillion stimulus package into law. And of that, $200 million was designated for the Institute of Museum and Library Services for pandemic response funding. This enabled IMLS to pass through funding via an existing program that they have called Grants to States, which gives funding to the state library administrative agencies. So as Rich said, we are the state library for DC, as well as the public library. And so as part of the Grants to States program, we were allocated just over $2 million, which we were able to spend between April of 21 and last month. So a little bit about IMLS for you to review. Basically, this program, the Grants to States program, is to support the purposes and priorities outlined in the Library Services and Technologies Act, which is LSTA, which you probably heard us mention before. And for perspective, our yearly LSTA grant is $1 million. So as Rich said, having this extra $2 million on top of that was quite a lot to shift. A quick refresher on what ARPA was meant to support. There are these three general concepts, and we have categorized our spending, as you'll see in the next slides. So.
At 7 p.m., we will have another installation of the Well-Read Black Girl series. Laura Edom will be in conversation with Jamila Minix for an enlightening discussion about her novel, Moonrise over New Jessup. That is Well-Read Black Girl series in New Books on the ground floor at 7 p.m. Thank you.
If anyone needs to leave to attend that, I completely understand. All right, so what we're going to talk about tonight are our activities around digital inclusion, things that we did to help us safely respond to the pandemic and implement public health protocols, and then support library services that meet the needs of communities. So pretty broad categories. Here we have some estimated expenditures, and I say estimated because our final numbers are not yet in, but this is pretty accurate. We spent just over $1 million on activities to support safe and accessible libraries, a little bit less than that on services to meet community needs, and about $260,000 on digital inclusion efforts. And we're going to talk about digital inclusion first because while that isn't a huge amount of money in the overall pot, we did manage to leverage that amount to have kind of a larger impact than that number might indicate. So looking at this, our digital inclusion efforts included expanding access to technology and providing training opportunities. So a couple of big takeaways is that we trained 12 adults on Google applications. We revamped our Library on the Go tech truck, launched a digital navigator program, and distributed 10,000 Chromebooks to eligible DC residents. So a little bit more about some of those. Grow with Google is an initiative that's run out of our adult learning department. This was actually the third cohort of folks that we've put through it, and the staff are so happy with it that we're going to fund an additional cohort using LSTA funds later this summer. The program is a targeted workforce development initiative specifically to address the digital divide. And although we had 18 people sign up for this group, we actually had 12 at the end, which is pretty good retention. For our digital navigator,
Does Google contribute to this?
we have a Google certified educator and trainer. They're not giving us any money to do it.
Okay, but they provide the trainer?
It's a certified trainer from Google. I don't know that they have worked for Google.
Okay.
And how did we identify those 18, or how do we decide?
People sign up for it. So it's from public interest.
Okay.
Well, let me, Rob, you gotta call Google. They gotta make some contributions here.
You know, we've worked with them for a long time. They much prefer their in-kind contributions, like this sort of thing, devices.
Don't we all?
They're struggling.
That's a luxury.
Hey, I'm sure. I feel bad for my Silicon Valley friends.
There are a lot of telecom or companies that we need help from.
You wouldn't know any of that, right?
And many of them prefer in-kind
In-kind,
services.
yeah.
Moving on.
Sorry, can I ask another question about that? Is there a certification at the end or any
So there isn't,
credential?
there's no formal credential. We did provide people with certificates, but there's no formal credential for this.
So do we do follow-up? So do we know what happens with them? Are they able to get jobs as a result of the training?
I don't have that information, but we
Okay.
can follow up and get back to you with that.
Yeah, we typically don't. Megan, you can speak to this probably better than anyone, right? In terms of following up with the students for our classes, even with like the Microsoft Office certification classes, we get the certification, but we just typically don't have the mechanism by which we follow up 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. It's been done sometimes with like specific grant-related programs, but not in my experience here.
I think these programs are a great opportunity to do that because we do have specific residents attending over multiple weeks, so we know who they are. Where many of our other computer programs are drop-in. So I think the opportunity is there to do some more in-depth impact, but I don't think we have the tools to do that right now.
Thank you.
You call them students, so.
They're adults.
Oh, they're adults, okay.
And have we, I guess, do we partner with the Department of Employee Services?
For this, I'm not sure. Not to my knowledge,
Sounds
though.
like workforce development, this would be a great opportunity.
All right. Well, thank you. Sorry for interrupting.
It's okay. So our Digital Navigator program, you definitely have heard of. In FY22, we piloted this program by hiring 5 part-time navigators. We also brought on a full-time digital inclusion coordinator to help with that work this year. The navigators went full-time and have actually moved to our local budget. So this is now a permanent program through our budget enhancement. So this is a great example of how we started something on grant funds and is now a permanent part of what we can offer as a library. Specific to ARPA funding, in addition to paying them, we also provided them with laptops, paid for their public transportation, and they are a huge asset to our branches. They're providing one-on-one basic PC help, helping people with their resumes, learning how to use virtual meeting platforms, any kind of digital one-on-one help This is a huge deal for the branches. Normal staff at the library don't have time to sit down one-on-one with customers for 40 minutes at a time. So this has really been a game changer for us in terms of how we help the public.
Yeah, and a lot of our customers don't have the ability or time to come to formal classes on, how to use Zoom or anything like this. So it's the on-demand, and this has been the case as long as I've been working in libraries. That's what folks want. It's like, I need help right now because I'm here right now, and the digital navigators give us that ability.
And do they do, I know with the federal government's Affordable Connectivity Program, broadband is free for many income-constrained residents. Do they help residents sign up for that free broadband?
They will be.
Thank you.
And Sarah, sorry, what are their hours?
They're full-time.
They're
so I think-
full-time? Okay.
I'm not
So-
sure what their tours of duty look
And
like.
those are the branches that they're at, Anna, Benning, MLK, Mount Pleasant, Petworth?
That's
Okay.
right. So if you were to go down to Digital Commons here, you would meet with Melissa, I believe is her name, who works here.
Awesome. Okay, thank you.
Sure. So we also put some money towards revamping our Library on the Go-Go truck, which is a huge thing that we love at the library. We got a new wrap for it with our new branding. We bought them a bunch of equipment to support their outdoor programming,
Yep.
including VR headsets, which I got a photo the other day of 2 teens actually using them sitting in the truck, which is a big deal for us.
I think we've got 6 visits lined up for Brightwood Park in August.
Yeah, I was going to say, the big thing is that we hired a full-time driver for this, which really helps us get it out into the neighborhoods. And this photo is from Kennedy Street, Brightwood Park, my neighborhood, from earlier this year. They're having a foam party. The truck is there. It's a great opportunity for us to get out into the community.
Well, I'm moving just to that neighborhood, basically, so I'm excited to see the activity.
I'll see you at the ice cream store. All right, so as Tony mentioned, FCC Emergency Connectivity Fund is something that we did a lot with this year. I want to stress that we did not purchase 10,000 internet-enabled Chromebooks, but we did partner with Octo and other DC agencies to distribute those Chromebooks. And we are continuing to stay engaged with program participants through a monthly newsletter. The contracted helpline to help people who receive these devices is available through the end of September. And the helpline technicians are already reaching out to folks to try and sign them up for the Affordable Connectivity Program. So this is something that will be ongoing, even though our participation in it is not being funded in an ongoing way.
I guess, similar to the Google comment, if we haven't talked to, Comcast or Verizon about how they could partner with them to get folks connected to via ACP, we should do that.
Sure. So switching gears and looking at our safe and accessible libraries, as I said, we spent just over $1 million investing in this area. And one of the first expenditures that we made of ARPA funding was through our facilities department, who identified the need for over 100 air purification units and filters, which we deployed throughout the system during the summer of 2021, really at the height of the pandemic, to make our spaces safer. We also purchased new self-check kiosks with our IT department, which we distributed around the system, and you've probably seen and or used one in one of our branches. We purchased new AED defibrillation units, and handsets for our staff to use with LanguageLine, which is our telephone interpretation service, so they don't have to share a handset with a member of the public. And then we also are going to implement, and this is pretty cool, so I'm going to talk about it a little bit, Good Maps, which is a neat free app. So this is a little sneak peek. This is a free app where we're partnering with Good Maps. They've come in, they've used laser scanning for the whole MLK building, and they're going to create a digital map that anybody can use to identify doors, elevators, other points of interest in the building. The text is a little bit small, but we've identified the current installations on the first floor. This, while it's for everyone, is sort of specifically targeted to people who are blind or low vision, and so it's going to make the space more accessible and safer for them. So this is something we're doing through our Center for Accessibility, and I am so excited to see it roll out. So stay tuned for that.
long days, just on trade. I promise on to put this on everything. We on our way, like a sneaker without the logo. When we kick it, we still the same on the low though. On a very low. Like a polo head, on the low I swear. We gon' prevail, yeah. On the low though, on a very low. All them folks in the road.
But as we've discussed, you know, the budget is tight. Why am I looking at Jaspreet?
She's taking it to build all those buildings.
Right, but it's an important service, and we've heard over and over again that it is one of the barriers that that prevent people from coming to using our spaces. So it is important.
Well, good to hear. I mean, I look forward to getting the list of where we are going to be
Sure.
piloting those. You know, obviously encourage us to think about, you know, again, not just the most used, but actually some of our underused meeting space as a good opportunity to draw people into those.
Yeah.
And then I guess, Sarah, so we gave out 10,000 Chromebooks. Do we expect those back? What happened to them? Are they just now out there? Like,
Megan-
what happens with these 10,000?
Megan's gonna help us with this.
So you guys know Megan O'Connor. I know Tony knows her well. And Megan is our Director of Service Design and Engagement, and her team worked with Lamy and IT to oversee the Devices for Residents program, and you can answer.
Yeah. Good evening, Mr. Chair. We're just as an FYI, we're actually preparing a brief report about the program, so we'll be able to answer more fully, I'm sure, the many questions you have. But to your question of the moment, it's a 1-year loan period. To be honest, if we could have given them away, we would have, but the FCC rules require that it be a loan. So it's a 1-year loan period with the intent of renewing the loan every year. If people have a desire to return them, they can get in touch with us and we'll take them back. And if they're still functioning, we're working on recirculating those through our adult learning department. So we do have a plan in place for that, but it's our hope that people will be able to use these fully for the lifetime of the devices.
Fantastic. And remind me, the FCC makes us get them back in the loan program. Do we owe, like, at some point, do we actually owe them back to anyone, or?
No, once they
how
are
do we-
no
do we do-
longer
do-
functional, they can be returned to us and we'll go through the process of disposing of government property. We will remind people that they need to be renewed, and that they will be renewed unless the customer wants to take a different action. And as Lamy reminds me, often we will be audited.
So have people returned them? Have you had returns? I assume that's not a popular option.
It's not a popular option. We've had a very small number of returns.
So, not for now, but I guess I do want to make sure, I just want to understand what our compliance exposure is here, if we are supposed to be, if these are supposed to be, you know, supposed to be receiving them or getting them back. I have no idea why, but like, if, I want to make sure that we have no exposure if
We
they're
looked
not
at it
returned.
very closely, and legal looked at it closely. I mean, we're fully protected
We are.
with this sort of like planned obsolescence
And I
lifetime.
can say, other library systems actually had an indefinite loan in implementing the same program. So we're not in any way an outlier in approaching it this way.
Okay. I just want to make sure that if we do have a change in administration and folks are cracking down on waste, fraud, and abuse, that we do not expose us
Yep.
for.
Okay. I just want to touch on one other thing. We did invest quite a bit in our new website. Not going to talk too much about it because Corey gave such a great presentation on it at our last meeting. But we did invest ARPA funding in the website. And the piece that I want to make sure that everyone is aware of, in my capacity as our agency language access coordinator, we have finally implemented a translation feature. It's a widget called WeGlot. On our main bar, you can now click on this drop-down menu and select one of the District's 6 main languages, and almost the entire website will now render in your language of choice. This is something we've been wanting to implement for a really long time, so it's exciting.
Can you actually, by any chance, show us on the website how you would navigate to the remote lending program?
I am not familiar with it, to be honest.
Which one? Books by mail?
The one
Yeah.
Susan was talking about?
Susan, the one Susan was talking about.
Anybody want to look for it? I mean, and I'll say, you know, there are lots of fixes that need to happen on the current website. I haven't kicked the tires on all the departments, but.
Well, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, sir. I was just, so I apologize. That was,
I mean, it's called Books by Mail. I'm sure if you do a search, we'll.
We have our expert here, Susan. Thank you.
Library.
Yeah. Hmm, okay. It's my favorite.
There it is.
So it looks like it's housed under our using the library
perfect.
section.
Well, I think certainly looks like there's an opportunity maybe for us to look at how we make it more accessible, but thank you so much for, Sarah, for your presentation and for helping us navigate to the Library by Mail program.
Thanks, Sarah. And now, sort of in terms of what's next, you all know that we are beginning our strategic planning process. And going back to 2021, we said we've got all these things that we need to do. Let's not do any strategic planning in '21. Let's do that now. So we're kicking off that strategic framework process, and I think we can sort of put our heads together and say, you know, where should we be going down the, you know, the digital readiness. You know, what are we going to do now that we've distributed all these machines? We need to distribute more. What's learning look like? I mean, there's a lot that we'll need to think through, and I think that's what this whole planning process will look like.
Well, I look forward to that. I think, you know, as we enter that, Rich, look forward to also hearing how we will, you know, make sure that we get the right community input into that plan. In particular, want to make sure that our various Friends chapters also have some input into that as well. They had, you know, when we had the opportunity to meet with them, I think it's 2 months ago now, was just really, you know, was clearly they have, you know, they are valuable in terms of the experience that they have with our library system and the ways that we can improve it.
For sure.
All right, is that the?
That's it.
So next up, we have our board committee reports. Why don't we start with our contracts review committee and Vanilla?
Thank you. The Contracts Review Committee did not meet as there were no contracts over $1 million to consider. So we have not met since the last May board meeting.
Fantastic. Victor was not available to join us, and Barbara Jumper is also unavailable. So we're going to skip the Finance Committee report this evening, but you know, we are in you know, no significant changes, continue to be in good health and, you know, on track with our budget.
And we do have great staff from the finance office here if anybody has any questions. But there's a lot of green in that report, which I typically, that's all I look for, a color, and I don't even read the text often.
God bless. Now I'm like, maybe we should dive into
We've got the locations, by the way, of the hybrid technology.
Oh, please.
Capitol View, West End, Bellevue Library, and either the Woodridge or Anacostia. Okay. So those 4 locations right now.
All right. Facilities Committee, Andrew.
Great, thank you. I first want to start off by talking about Library by Mail, the other side of the multi-generational books. I got my first, or well, my son got his first books from birth.
Little
this
engine
last
that,
month. Yeah.
little engine that could.
Yay.
So that was exciting. And then on to facilities. So there's the work on the new Eckington Edgewood, the facilities committee met on June 27th at noon. The work on the new Edgewood/Eckington Library and the replacement Rosedale Library is starting. Work with the firm called Key Urban has been firm Key Urban has been selected to conduct a real estate inventory and do some of the planning work required to move forward on those.
To identify a location.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, so it's a consulting firm that's doing the kind of preliminary real estate work.
Got it.
We've talked a good amount about the Southeast Library expansion and renovation tonight. In terms of status, the permit phase and the value engineering are continuing, and the closure is being targeted for the fall and will be preceded by a six-week notice to the community. Before that, there will be a final community meeting, and that will share construction phase logistics, and I imagine updates as well about the interim services per some of the discussions and questions we heard today. So then on to Congress Heights, which is the replacement for the Parklands Turner Library. The contracting team is Turner Construction and Perkins and Will, and they've been working with the community on engagement. There's an input survey that has been launched and is actually going on through July 31st for those interested. I'm excited. We were excited to see that there's a targeting of community ambassadors, but especially a teen council and some of the younger residents and youth in the neighborhood. And there were community workshops held in May and June. And coordination continues with them, with DEMPED, WMATA, and DDOT on that. Deanwood Library, WMATA held their formal compact public hearing on July 11th, 2023, and there was a lot of interest from a lot of the feedback that they heard was support of the library in those plans. And so there's a letter of intent to anchor a 20,000 square foot plus full service library at that station. I'm sorry, that's part of the public record. For Chevy Chase Library, that's being led by the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development. They're shepherding an RFP for a mixed-use development that would include a library, a replacement community center, and housing. Before that RFP, DEMPED is working to solicit and compile stakeholder input because there's, I think, a lot of interest in that neighborhood, as I know from my previous life. And the DC Public Library is coordinating with DEMPED on that and on the process.
I might interrupt Andrew and say that we're meeting with the leadership of the Department of Parks and Recreation to compare our programs and figure out a way in which we can align our policies so that residents have a seamless experience when they go to, assuming that these two things will be next to each other or co-located or possibly even share some common areas, meeting rooms, that sort of thing. Right now, as you might know, DPR has certain ways of doing things. The library has other ways of doing things. We've committed, me and Delano and now his successor, Theny, we're going to strive to do it as one thing, which I'm really excited about.
So is that also the case at Rosedale? Because Rosedale's co-located too, right?
No, because we're leaving the Rosedale Community Center complex, and it'll be maybe more akin to what we will be doing, what we did at like West End or Deanwood, something like that.
Got it.
I'll just say, I appreciate, as a user, that is always very appreciated. As having worked in government, I know how challenging that can be. So I appreciate that work, and I know there'll probably be various hurdles that you'll have to overcome.
Oh, I'm sure.
But I think that's important, and it can help make sure the space is put to the best use and utilized well.
Right, and if we have 20,000 feet of needs and they've got 30,000 feet of needs, and we realize that 5,000 of ours is 5,000 of theirs, that could be there could be some savings, some efficiencies. I mean, there's a lot that we need to unpack.
Great. So that's all, I think, good news up until this point, which is the Shaw Library interior renovation. The primary contractor lost all their key personnel, was absorbed by another firm, and the contract was terminated on July 17th, 2023, which actually that happened after our committee meeting, but we knew that this was coming. I think it's kind of reassessing what this means for the project, including budget implications, is happening right now, determining how and if that may affect the FY25 budget request. Yeah.
So those funds were already allocated, right? So can we?
Well, the
reallocate?
problem is, I think there's going to be, this is a cost increase. It's going to have an impact on the budget. So it's now sort of a problem. It's a budget shortfall because of that lost.
But I mean, in the short term, it's.
We were going to
it's
do
gonna
this
show
out of
bond.
general improvements, Chanel, but, frankly, I think the scope of the project and now the delay based on the
transition.
Broughton's effectively being dissolved, it's going to require us to ask for dedicated funding for this project. And I mean, look, there could be some downstream benefits. We certainly have no shortage of uses for our general maintenance dollars. So, we will lobby for it.
Because it was still like 1-1, right? 1-2? What was the estimated
No.
cost?
It was well north of 4.
Oh, it
Yeah.
was coming out of general fund.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And then the other interior renovation was Petworth, and the design build team was, it's under review by procurement. Design's expected to begin in the fall, and brief closure for construction's expected next summer. And that concludes a report out from our meeting.
Andrew, I know you mentioned that they were doing the site, looking for sites for the Edgewood Library. What's the timeline on that?
I mean, ideally, we want to do it in this fiscal year, but I don't think it's going to occur in this fiscal year. Again, Jaspreet, do you want to share something? Yeah.
So the way we wrote the scope is that we want the inventory done to identify or shortlist a few sites with this year's funding, and then we have funding in the next year, which was allocated for Rosedale. But what we're doing is sort of like buying two for the price of one. So doing inventory for both Eckington, Edgewood, as well as Rosedale. And we'll use the Rosedale money to kind of delve deeper into the shortlisting, including test fitting these with the community for viability, et cetera, for development.
And Jaspreet, while we've got you, are we Shepherd Park? What's the latest with?
There is no latest. As you all know, there's legislation that has been passed that allows us to renovate or rebuild the Shepherd Park Library on its current site, but not to relocate it anywhere else. So that's one thing. And in addition, there has been $5 million added to the FY24 budget, providing the city the opportunity to purchase some land on Kennedy Street in between two points, 13th Street, I believe, and maybe another street. And that is now basically the purview of the mayor and who she identifies to do the purchasing of that. But it wouldn't be the library. Obviously, we don't purchase land. And back to Shepherd Park, it's, that project is scheduled to kick off in FY27. I think Leif was just out there a week ago, exposed to the real, not just, the building is only 30 some odd years old, but it's the layout, the usable space. It is and Jaspreet and I have spent a lot of time out there. We can't say definitively, but we think that a rebuild is going to be the way to go for that library. But we've got a few years to think about it.
Fantastic, thank you. Thank you, Andrew. And then Chanel, P3.
Yeah, and so before I begin P3, I just have to thank Andrew for taking over the Facilities Committee. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks.
You're doing a stellar job. The P3 committee did not meet last in May, so we will meet again in September, and we'll have an update then. That concludes the P3 committee update.
Wonderful. All right. Well, with this, I would like to invite Robert to come and give the report from the Federation of Friends.
Oh, but Robert, I'm sorry. Sort of in line with the P3 committee, Rich spoke about the attendance, and we can attribute that attendance to Leonardo, but we can also attribute it to the GoGo, and I just want to shout out Tansy for putting on a fantastic summer series on a rooftop, because it was all over social media, and people who had never been to the library, they're talking about this rooftop, so great job, Tansy. All yours, Rob.
All right, well, let me start by saying that the library has a lot of good and talented people, so I'm not surprised that Tansy or anybody else who does a good job once they start working with whatever medium or project or concert that they're dealing with. So, kudos to her and everybody else in this hard-working organization. One of the people that the Friends would like to see before I formally start is we'll get around to meeting the new security chief one of these days at our Friends meeting, hopefully in August, but we'll see. It's August. Fantastic. Well, we'll be more than happy to see you, and we'll have a lot to talk about, but it's all good. Okay, thank you. My name is Robert Oliver. I'm the president of the Federation of Friends of the D.C. Public Library, and I'm also the president of the Lamont Riggs Library. I'd like to start by talking about Federation Policies and Procedures update. In anticipation of future membership drives, the Federation is updating its current policies and procedures. The steps to form a Friends group document has been revised and is being reviewed by select Friends presidents. These steps help each new Friends group navigate the Federation, the Internal Revenue, and DC agency policy. It also provides helpful links as needed. What this does is that over the years, becoming a friend, getting a determination letter, dealing with everything that goes on now with going from the IRS, which gives you tax exemption only, and then going to the actual state of municipality, which gives you your nonprofit status. The two are separate. So you have to go through each one, accomplish each one. In the case of DC, you have the Office of Tax and Revenue, which you have to deal with. You used to have to deal with DCRA, but now I think it's the Department of Licenses and Consumer Protection. So that's entirely new, and so we had to update a lot of our document to incorporate these new websites so that anyone who comes into the Federation knows what to do and how to do it at their own pace, because the policies and procedures and guidelines are written. So we have used it with success when Bellevue came in. But Bellevue could not hold on, so they're still kind of struggling. But in any case, this document is ready for submission and presentation to any new library or existing library who just wants to check their policies and procedures to make sure they're straight. The document also mentions the new website called MyDC, which everyone uses now to go to their tax accounts in the city and see whether they're current, and also to check their clean hands. Next, I want to talk about the second quarter Wild Apricot disbursements. Wild Apricot is the application that we use. It's a content management application that does membership management, but also on the side, it gives you web page capability. And this is great for new organizations that come in that have small staffs. They get a website and the ability to process credit cards in terms of building their membership. This is what Wild Apricot does. And it's great for new members that come in, but also we have people graduate from Wild Apricot. And you say, well, why graduate? Well, they grow to a size in which they can take on these projects in-house, the membership project, and of course, bringing in money and so forth. One of the reasons that they do this is that in Wild Apricot, we're somewhat limited in that we need almost a full-time staff to run this, and so we don't have it. So what happens is that we do reimbursements on a quarterly basis, donations, membership fees, what have you. If you're going to take that same process in-house, then you can do it quickly. You can use Zelle or what have you and have your money same day. We can probably do the same thing, but it would be a very complicated endeavor because we're not talking about one organization. We're talking about 26, and that's a lot for anybody to try to keep track of. So we do have people who come in all the time, and over time they have graduated. Organizations that have graduated include Shepherd Park, it includes, I think, Georgetown, and a couple of others. But this is just a natural ebb and flow of this particular application and program. At any rate, in terms of the disbursements, we distributed money for the second quarter of 2023, which was April 1st through June 30th, and there are about 9 or 10 groups that have received reimbursements at this point in time. Next is the October annual meeting and elections. Elections will be held during our annual meeting on October 18th, 2023. This year, the offices of President, Secretary, and Membership Secretary are open. In addition, the office of Treasurer is also open. Each position has a 2-year term, excluding the Treasurer, who has only 1 year remaining in their term. I am encouraging all members to run and help support the Federation of Friends of the D.C. Public Library as we navigate from the pandemic into the future. And coming back to some of the things that Richard has said, people are not going to the library as much as they used to. Now, not all of us had the Leonardo exhibit in our, backyard, so that cuts down on the people who come. And because of that, basically, we are looking at an uncertain future. We want to know how, do we go forward? What's going on with membership? Will we have what we once had prior to the pandemic? So those are all questions that are still up in the air, and those will be some of the issues that the leadership team, whether it's composed of the same people or new people, will have to deal with. But at any rate, we welcome anyone who wants to run, and preferably we're looking for younger people. A lot of the organizations, I'll give you one in particular, Francis Gregory, their leadership team is all over 60. They are familiar with applications, but not to the same extent as people who are in their 30s or 40s. So that is something that we need to work on, is to bring in younger blood who is more adept and familiar with using today's applications, the present applications, and God knows what else will come in the future, especially AI. Okay. Next, Friends activities. This is just, the following is a list of various activities that our members have hosted and or supported. This is not a complete list, but just some highlights. And I kind of picked some contrasts just to show you all of the things that the members are doing throughout the city. First is Cleveland Park is expanding its highly successful chess program to include adults, and Cleveland Park is entertaining a collaboration with Chevy Chase in terms of its chess program. Lamont Riggs Lillian J. Huff celebrated its 1-year anniversary on June 27th with family-friendly entertainment throughout the day. Art work by Michelle Herman. The artist was unveiled as part of our Heritage Wall dedication, and this event was well received. Just to give you some idea of the Heritage Wall very quickly, DCPL with Linnea and others have approached, well, every branch are asked, what would you like to do for art? And in each case, the community is asked, what symbolizes community in 1 or 2 words? In our case, we said community. Community is a nice word, but it's a hard concept to put into something tangible. So what the artist, Michelle Lisa Herman, did was to come up with this crazy idea. It actually worked. But what happened was she wanted to build a digital quilt. And how she built this digital quilt was she wanted a picture, something dear that was to each and every family. It could be a picture of family members, it could be the pet dog, it could be the children, their car, whatever. And also, yes, the car too. Also, what they asked for was some type of memento, some cloth or something. It could be a quilt, it could be a blanket, it could be something a baby was swallowed in, or in the case of the car, what you use to polish it. So at any rate, she built a quilt. She built a piece, which is about maybe 2 feet by 2 feet, incorporating those items. And then she did one for each and every family that submitted. So what happened was we wound up with 42 images, okay? And they were 6 across and 7 tall. So they're actually about 2 stories tall and at least half a story wide. And it's a very beautiful and imaginative piece that I don't think there's anything else that's like it exists. So when you have a chance, and I'll probably put a picture on the website, when you have a chance, you should come and check it out. And she did this in high resolution digital filming so that when you look at it, you can actually see the strands of thread in the cloth. And it almost has a 3D effect. But enough of that. I have others who have also done great work. Shepherd Park has hosted an author talk by Rochelle L. Swan, who discussed her book, The 272, The Families Who Were Enslaved and Sold to Build the American Catholic Church. Well, I'll leave that as it is. But it seems to be a very interesting book, and the folks who attended that session really enjoyed it, and it is still being, I guess, looked up and reviewed by some people. And lastly, Georgetown, on James Baldwin's birthday, August 2nd, the Georgetown Neighborhood Library is hosting a special event that includes a screening of the acclaimed documentary, I Am Not Your Negro, followed by a discussion on his life and legacy led by Nolan Harris, library associate at the D.C. Public Library. This is the first event of a year-long program that focuses on Baldwin's work and his contributions to African-American literature and the civil rights movement. And with that, I conclude my report. Any questions?
Mr. Harmon, is the quote enclosed, or is it, I haven't gone to Lamont Riggs, the quote?
Oh, quote. Oh, no.
The community quote.
Oh, no. You can see it. You can see it from outside the building. Yes, come to Lamont Riggs, come through the front door, make a hard left, and you'll run right into it. It's right by the stairway.
And Jasper, is everything complete at Lamont Riggs now? All furniture has been delivered?
Furniture, yes. There are some 80 items that are still outstanding that we hopefully receive by end of this year.
Out of our control, right?
Well, I'm sure we'll have it by the next anniversary, so I'm not worried. Okay, well, thank everybody for their time. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Rob. And, in the great tradition, we go from one Rob to another. So, Rob Hartman.
Do we need a restroom break, or you could?
What's that? A restroom break? No, we're good.
Okay.
I'll start my lengthy presentation. Good evening, everybody. It's good to see everybody. Good news from the foundation front. I will say, as of June, the first 6 months of our fiscal year, we go on the calendar year, we have contributed a little over $620,000 worth of programs to the library. So really proud of that. I think we're going to end up going over budget, which is a good thing, not a bad thing in my case. So hopefully we're going to end the year strong. We've got a lot of great proposals in the hopper for some other great support, specifically one regarding health and human services and some of the important work that the library does with the unhoused, as well as a few things around the workforce development. With all that being said, I am super proud of what the week we just came off of, and that is our annual Institute for Racial Equity and Literacy Conference. This is a conference where we host about 70 educators and librarians. This year we had 10 librarians from DC participate in this training, 2 3-day trainings, one reading to freedom, one writing to freedom, where the participants are immersed in a professional development program to learn how to live an anti-racist life and bring that into their schools and libraries with tricks and tools and resources to do that. Combined with that, we had a Wednesday night author talk with local New York Times bestselling author Jason Reynolds, along with Sonia Cherry Paul and Trisha Bavara, and Carol Lindstrom, who's a local author of Native descent, who's actually, her book will be the November Beyond the Book book. So you'll see her artwork it's a beautiful, beautiful book. So really proud of that work. Rich was able to attend and deliver some remarks talking about how this particular space is meant for conferences like that. And I'll give a little anecdote. On the last day, one of our librarians, Joy Jones, participated. Joy's written a book. Kayla jumps in about Double Dutch. And she's very into Double Dutch, and so are the organizers of the conference. So after having this week-long hard discussion about race and one's feelings, we went out to the terrace on the 5th floor, and we all jumped Double Dutch, including myself. It was hadn't done that in a while. But it was a lot of
Chief, that's not allowed. So
I want the video.
We'll talk offline.
I have video. I have video. But it brings a lot of joy. And then in the afternoon, both on the last day of the writing and the reading conference, the participants were able to explore the library. And I can't wait to share with you all the responses from the first group. They did a scavenger hunt. It was a really purposeful scavenger hunt that was put together. It was really clever. And I'll tell some anecdotes off, not in the public meeting. That was really funny. But they had a great time. And the feedback that came back is exactly what you would want it to as a board of trustees, right? They noticed the joy in the children's room in the slide. They noticed the teens populating the teen space and how they were actively using it. They obviously noticed the technology on the 3rd floor. They noticed the artwork and the social justice messaging that was hidden throughout the building, not so hidden, but pretty overt, as well as all the other things that you would, and I have that information captured and I'll share that out. But I was so excited to get that feedback. And then on the last day of the second round, there just happened to be a documentary, a environmental justice documentary playing that afternoon about the Eastern Shore. So participants were able to spend their time watching the documentary and hearing the filmmakers discuss that. Then another participant was wandering the 4th floor looking at the exhibits and was invited in to a poetry workshop that was happening. So she ended up writing a piece of poetry about the conference that she was in and then shared it with the group, and there were tears and hugs. And I mean, and so the whole point, and I tell this story because, you bring in a conference like this, but where else could things like that happen but at a public library? And so that's why we do what we do. And it was really, really, really special. So really glad to report on that. We also, since I've last been here, I've been to Austin, Texas for the library fundraising conference. So it was myself and, maybe 120 of my favorite library fundraisers from around the country. Sharing best practices, talking about what's happening in the world, what they're seeing from donors, what they're seeing at their libraries. And I will say, I just want to say thank you to this leadership group, but also to the community that we live in, because I was able to go there and authentically represent what it is our foundation stands for and what our community stands for, which is love, not hate. And spoke a lot and was definitely one of the louder voices in talking about how intellectual freedom and the banning of books is just not acceptable. Intellectual freedom is extremely important. We don't, if it costs us some donors in talking about these issues, then we're happy to let those donors go. And, sort of made it clear that our foundation is not a neutral player in what many deem a culture war. If it's a war, that means it's life and death, and it means that we need to treat it that way and make sure that our kids and our society is supported with the books and the information that they need. So on that note, this October, please mark your calendars. October 6th, we'll be having our fundraising gala. This year, it will not be a small dinner, but we're blowing it out. It is going to be titled Battle of the Band, and we're pretty excited about it. It is going to be a contest among those library branches that raise their hand to create library displays about their favorite banned books. We will have them on the first floor, and participants in the event will be able to vote on their favorite one. We're creating an app even where we might sell some votes, since it is Washington, where people can, really go for their favorite branch. So far, the call went out yesterday. We already have 6 branches signed up. We've asked all the branches to participate that want to, along with the MLK will have 4 representations potentially based on their divisions. So we have a flyer, we have information. We have right now we're just talking about major sponsorships, and then we'll figure out individual tickets and what those look like. Sponsorships range from the rock star level at $50,000, and I'm proud to say Pepco, an Exelon company, has jumped on board for that, as well as Monumental Sports and Entertainment. So we have 2 wonderful rock stars in our midst, and then all the way down to an entry level of $2,500 for a sponsorship, which is entitled a roadie. So we have those available. There'll be a VIP up on the roof at 6, and then the major party will happen at 7 with a band and music, and it should be a lot of fun. But we're really trying to raise, in the end, we're trying to raise money, and it'll come through sponsorships. So obviously, anybody who's interested, spread the word. Local businesses, small businesses, large telecom businesses, whatever it might be, we'll be talking to you. But that's what I've got.
Do you have any matches coming up, Rob?
Any what?
Any matches? Any donation matches, or would that?
Any matches? Yeah, I've always got matches. So I don't have it locked in yet, but we are looking at a very large gift to support, like I said, our health and human services, and we're looking at a potential match for that program. That we would be hoping to raise about $250,000 in matching funds. Another match that I'm really excited about, which again I'm speaking with an organization, would be for the Arts and Exhibitions Fund that I'd like to create. One of the things that Leonardo's great, right? We all love Leonardo. We were asked by Rich to fund the Leonardo's Lab on the second floor to bring something to the library that's local and for the kids while people are waiting in line, and we immediately said yes. But these are things that pop up, right? These aren't necessarily things, and a lot of the great opportunities that come our way seem like, it's not that they're last minute, but they aren't necessarily something with a long lead time to raise money for. So now that we have this track record that Rich and his team has built with Leonardo and with Emmett Till and with a lot of these other great things in the library, I think we have a case to be made that we can use those funds properly and for real impact. So I am looking for an arts and exhibition match as well, which I'd be looking at about $500,000 in matched funds, to hopefully achieve about $100,000 a year. So 200 that can go towards those types of programs.
I mean, Rob, I want to just say just how impressive this is, and I hope you take a moment sometimes just to appreciate the growth of the foundation.
Thank you.
What you, Susan, and Marquette have built is absolutely incredible. When we think about $627,000, I think, worth of support you mentioned, I think that was unimaginable when I first joined the library board, and I remember sitting down and being briefed on the different parts, and so that is just tremendous to hear, and thank you. I think on behalf of the entire board for the work that the foundation does and the programming that you continue to bring and to bring these spaces to life. Rich, when we talk about activating some of the branches, I think the foundation is a great partner and worth to have us having a conversation with them about how we do that together, and can support them to do that. Also, if there's anything that we as the board can do to support your fundraising efforts, I think we all
Appreciate
want
that.
to make sure that we are doing those and certainly look forward to the October 6th gala.
Yep, should be fun.
If since there will be a band, I think Rich has a wonderful singing voice, and he can contribute.
But he only sings in Italian now. That's his new thing. I don't know what to do. Let me also.
Karaoke station? I would do that in a heartbeat.
One of the things about that's we're at the halfway point, and we've done about 6. The largest expenditure, obviously, is through our grant program with Beyond the Book. It's about $200,000. But the second most category is actually the funding that we've done out into the branches, and specifically working with Tansy's team. So she gets another shout out tonight. That some of the community-based events that we've been able to do have really, and the fact that we're going back to some of the same locations. So when Art All Night happens at Woodridge this year with the first ever teen Art All Night, that's just absolutely fabulous. And we're getting, it's no longer 20s and 30s, 40s, 50s. We're getting hundreds of people, and it'll eventually turn into thousands of people. So shout out to the marketing team for that as well.
Thank you, Rob. Before Rob concludes, let me open up to my fellow trustees for any comments, questions. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Rob.
Tony.
With that, any new business?
Just a question. And Gary, maybe you can help us. I haven't received a newsletter in a while. Beyond Words, is that still?
That's still going.
It may have removed me from the list, but
You gotta check your spam.
true. Okay. And any update, Rich, on the hours since we've changed it? It's too soon?
No, overall, Q3 just ended on July 31st, and the numbers across the system looked better. So we were seeing upticks in branches that had only been experiencing decreases. The couple of decreases were in our heaviest used branches, and that decrease, I think, was largely based on the fact that these branches were heavy COVID testing sites, and they're not any longer. But I'm not worried about Mount Pleasant or Cleveland Park. Those places are always going to be used. If it won't be 200,000 people, it might be 160,000 people. But I was really happy to see the Anacostias and a bunch of other libraries have very nice quarter-over-quarter increases in Q3. We're going to see if we can continue to sustain that. In terms of your question, if it was about the 9 to 8 p.m. hour, 8 a.m. hour, we have not done any granular look at attendance in the morning versus evening, but we'll do that at some point. We think we might have a new data person starting soon. I don't think we've got a letter, but we're crossing our fingers that after a long search, we might have a great person to continue to produce our quarterly performance reports and all those other things that we used to produce.
Okay. Thank you. That was it for me, Chair. Thank you.
Any other new business questions? All right, if not, then only 20 minutes over this today, so want to bring this meeting to a close. Thank you all for attending. Do I have a motion to conclude today's board meeting?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Hello? Oh.